Good morning, spiritual companions. We are reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, continuing chapter 6, in the company of devotees, on page 256. Monday, June 4th, 1883. About 9 o'clock in the morning, the devotees began to arrive at the temple garden. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the porch of his room, facing the Ganges. M., who had spent the previous night with the master, sat near him. Balaram and several other devotees were present. Rakal lay on the floor, resting his head on the master's lap. The master asked Balaram to stay for his midday meal. Sri Ramakrishna described to the devotees the days of his God intoxication. Master, oh, what a state of mind I passed through. When I first had that experience, I could not perceive the coming and going of day or night. People said I was insane. What else could they say? They made me marry. I was then in a state of God intoxication. At first, I felt worried about my wife. Then I thought she too would live like me. I visited my father-in-law's house. They arranged a kirtan. It turned into a big religious festival, and there was much singing of God's holy name. Now and then I would wonder about my future. I would say to the Divine Mother, "Mother, shall I take my spiritual experiences to be genuine if the landlords of the country show me respect?" They too came of their own accord and talked with me. Oh, what an ecstatic state it was. Even the slightest suggestion would awaken my spiritual consciousness. I worshipped the Divine Mother in a girl 14 years old. I saw that she was the personification of the Mother. At that time, I used to invite maidens here and worship them. I found them to be the embodiments of the Divine Mother herself. One day I had gone to the Maidan in Calcutta for fresh air. A great crowd had assembled there to watch a balloon ascension. Suddenly, I saw an English boy leaning against a tree. As he stood there, his body was bent in 3 places. In the usual image of Krishna, one sees his body bent in 3 places. The vision of Krishna came before me in a flash. I went into samadhi. At that time, I was almost unconscious of the outer world. Mathur Babu kept me at his Jan Bazar mansion a few days. While living there, I regarded myself as the handmaid of the Divine Mother. The ladies of the house didn't feel at all bashful with me. They felt as free before me as women feel before a small boy or girl. Even now, the slightest thing awakens God consciousness in me. Rakal used to repeat God's name half aloud. At such times, I couldn't control myself. It would rouse my spiritual consciousness and overwhelm me. After his noon meal, the master took a short rest. Manilal Malik, an old member of the Brahmo Samaj, entered the room and sat down after saluting the master, who was still lying on his bed. Manilal asked him questions now and then, and the master, still half asleep, answered with a word or two. Then Sri Ramakrishna sat up. He spoke reassuringly to the devotees. Master, to M. Some think, "Oh, I am a bound soul. I shall never acquire knowledge and devotion." But if one receives the Guru's grace, one has nothing to fear. Once a tigress attacked a flock of goats. As she sprang on her prey, she gave birth to a cub and died. The cub grew up in the company of the goats. The goats ate grass, and the cub followed their example. They bleated, the cub bleated too. Gradually, it grew to a big tiger. One day, another tiger attacked the same flock. It was amazed to see the grass-eating tiger. Running after it, The wild tiger at last seized it, whereupon the grass-eating tiger began to bleat. The wild tiger dragged it to the water and said, "Look at your face in the water. It is just like mine. Here is a little meat. Eat it." Saying this, it thrust some meat into its mouth. But the grass-eating tiger would not swallow it and began to bleat again. Gradually, however, it got the taste for blood and came to relish the meat. Then the wild tiger said, "Now you see there is no difference between you and me. Come away and follow me into the forest." So there can be no fear if the Guru's grace falls on you. He will let you know who you are and what your real nature is. If the devotee practices spiritual discipline a little, the Guru explains everything to him. Then the disciple understands for himself what is real and what is unreal. One of the devotees said to himself, "Is the world unreal then? What then will happen to those who are living in the world? Must they too renounce it?" Sri Ramakrishna, who could see into a man's innermost thought, said very tenderly, "Suppose an office clerk has been sent to jail. He undoubtedly leads a prisoner's life there. But when he is released from jail, does he cut capers in the street? Not at all. He gets a job as a clerk again and goes on working as before. Even after attaining knowledge through the Guru's grace, one can very well live in the world as a Jivan Mukta." Thus did Sri Ramakrishna reassure those who were living as householders. It was a hot day in June 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on the steps of the Shiva temples in the temple garden. M arrived with ice and other offerings and sat down on the steps after saluting the master. Master to M. The husband of Mani Malik's granddaughter was here. He read in a book that God could not be said to be quite wise and omniscient. Otherwise, why should there be so much misery in the world? As regards death, it would be much better to kill a man at once instead of putting him through slow torture. Further, the author, in this autobiography of John Stuart Mill, writes that if he himself were the creator, he would have created a better world. M listened to these words in surprise and made no comment. Master to M. Can a man ever understand God's ways? I too think of God sometimes as good and sometimes as bad. He has kept us deluded by his great illusion. Sometimes he wakes us up and sometimes he keeps us unconscious. One moment the ignorance disappears and the next moment it covers our mind. If you throw a brickbat into a pond covered with moss, you get a glimpse of the water. But a few minutes later, the moss comes dancing back and covers the water. One is aware of pleasure and pain, birth and death, disease and grief, as long as one is identified with the body. All these belong to the body alone and not to the soul. After the death of the body, perhaps God carries one to a better place. It is like the birth of the child after the pain of delivery. Attaining self-knowledge, one looks on pleasure and pain, birth and death as a dream. How little we know. Can a 1-seer pot hold 10 seers of milk? At dusk, the evening service began in the different temples. The master was sitting on the small couch in his room, absorbed in the contemplation of the Divine Mother. Several devotees were also there. M intended to spend the night with the master. A little later, Sri Ramakrishna began to talk to a devotee on the veranda of his room. He said, "It is good to meditate in the small hours of the morning and at dawn. One should also meditate daily after dusk." He instructed the devotee about meditation on the personal God and on the impersonal reality. After a time, he sat on the semicircular porch west of his room. It was about 9 o'clock. "Master, those who come here will certainly have all their doubts removed. What do you say?" "That is true, sir." A boat was moving in the Ganges far away from the bank. The boatman began to sing. The sound of his voice floating over the river reached the master's ears, and he went into a spiritual mood. The hair on his body stood on end. He said to M, "Just feel my body." M was greatly amazed. After a time, Sri Ramakrishna began to converse again. "Master, those who come here must have been born with good tendencies. Isn't that true?" "It is true, sir." "Master, a guileless man easily realizes God. There are two paths, the path of righteousness and the path of wickedness. One should follow the path of righteousness." Saturday, July 21st, 1883. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when Sri Ramakrishna, with Ramlal and one or two other devotees, started from Dakshineswar for Calcutta in a carriage. As the carriage passed the gate of the Kali temple, they met M coming on foot with 4 mangoes in his hands. The carriage stopped and M saluted the master. Master to M with a smile, "Come with us, we are going to Adhar's house." M got joyfully into the carriage. Having received an English education, he did not believe in the tendencies inherited from previous births, but he had admitted a few days before that it was on account of Adhar's good tendencies from past births that he showed such great devotion to the master. Later on, he had thought about this subject and had discovered that he was not yet completely convinced about inherited tendencies. He had come to Dakshineswar that day to discuss the matter with Sri Ramakrishna. "Master, well, what do you think of Adhar?" "He has great yearning for God." "Master, Adhar, too, speaks very highly of you." M remained silent a while, and then began to speak of past tendencies. "I haven't much faith in rebirth and in inherited tendencies. Will that in any way injure my devotion to God?" "Master, it is enough to believe that all is possible in God's creation. Never allow the thought to cross your mind that your ideas are the only true ones and that those of others are false. Then God will explain everything. How much can a man understand of God's activities? The facets of God's creation are infinite. I do not try to understand God's actions at all. I have heard that everything is possible in God's creation, and I always bear that in mind. Therefore, I do not give a thought to the world, but meditate on God alone. Can one ever understand God's work? He is so near. Still, it is not possible for us to know him. That is true, sir. Master, God has covered all with his Maya. He doesn't let us know anything. Maya is woman and gold. He who puts Maya aside to see God can see him. Once, when I was explaining God's actions to someone, God suddenly showed me the lake at Karmarpukur. I saw a man pushing aside the green scum and drinking the water. The water was clear as crystal. God revealed to me that Satchidananda is covered by the scum of Maya. He who pushes the green scum aside can drink the water. The universe is conscious on account of the consciousness of God. Sometimes I find that this consciousness wriggles about, as it were, even in small fish. The carriage came to the crossing at Shova Bazar in Calcutta. The master continued, saying, "Sometimes I find that the universe is saturated with God's consciousness, as the earth is soaked with water in the rainy season. Well, I see so many visions, but I never feel vain about them." M. with a smile, "That you should speak of vanity, sir." Master, upon my word, I don't feel vanity even in the slightest degree. M. There once lived a man in Greece, Socrates by name. A voice from heaven said that he was wise among men. Socrates was amazed at this revelation. He meditated on it a long time in solitude, and then realized its significance. He said to his friends, "I alone of all people have understood that I do not know anything. But every man believes he is wise. In reality, all are ignorant." Master, now and then I say to myself, what is it I know that makes so many people come to me? Vaishnavarajan was a great pundit. He used to say to me, "I can find in the scriptures all the things you talk about. But do you know why I come to you? I come to hear them from your mouth." M. All your words tally with the scriptures. Master, have you found anyone else resembling me, any pundit or holy man? M. God has created you with his own hands, whereas he has made others by machine. All others he has created according to law. Master, laughing to Ramlal and the other devotees, did you hear what he said? Sri Ramakrishna laughed for some time and said at last, "Really and truly, I have no pride. No, not even the slightest bit." M. Knowledge does us good in one respect at least. It makes us feel that we do not know anything, that we are nothing. Master, right you are. I am nothing. I am nobody. Do you believe in English astronomy? M. It is possible to make new discoveries by applying the laws of Western astronomy. Observing the irregular movement of Uranus, the astronomers looked through their telescopes and discovered Neptune shining in the sky. They can also foretell eclipses. Master, yes, that is so. The carriage drove on. They were approaching Adar's house. Sri Ramakrishna said to M, "Dwell in the truth, and you will certainly realize God." Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Adhar's house and took a seat in the parlor. Ramlal, Adhar, M, and the other devotees sat near him. Rakal was staying with his father in Calcutta. Master, to Adhar, "Didn't you tell Rakal that I was coming?" Adhar, "Yes, I have sent him word." Finding that the master was eager to see Rakal, Adhar at once sent his carriage to fetch him. Adhar had felt a yearning to see the master that day, but he had not definitely known that Sri Ramakrishna was coming. Adhar, "You haven't been here in a long time. I prayed to God today that you might come. I even shed tears." The master was pleased and said with a smile, "You don't mean that." It was dusk and the lamps were lighted. Sri Ramakrishna saluted the Divine Mother with folded hands and sat quietly absorbed in meditation. Then he began to chant the names of God in his sweet voice. Govinda, Govinda, Satchidananda, Hari Hari. Every word he uttered showered nectar on the ears of the devotees. Adhar served Ramakrishna with fruits and sweets. End of that day. End of today's reading.